Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reading a little bit of the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Oh, I know it's backwards for you, but I hope you can hear me well. I don't have a mic, so yeah. I'm about to start chapter 28, The Madness of Mr. Crouch. Harry, Ron, and Hermione went up to the Owlery after breakfast on Sunday to send a letter to Percy asking, as Sirius had suggested, whether he had seen Mr. Crouch lately. They used Hedwig because it had been so long since she'd had a job. When they had watched her fly out of sight through the Owlery window, they proceeded down to the kitchen to give Dobby his new socks. The house elves gave them a very cheery welcome, bowing and curtsying and bustling around making tea again. Dobby was ecstatic about his present. "Harry Potter is too good to Dobby," he squeaked, wiping large tears out of his enormous eyes. "You saved my life with that gillyweed, Dobby, you really did," said Harry. "No chance of more of those eclairs, is there?" said Ron, who was looking around at the beaming and bowing house elves. "You've just had breakfast," said Hermione irritably, but a great silver platter of eclairs was already zooming toward them, supported by 4 elves. "We should get some stuff to send up to Snuffles," Harry muttered. "Good idea," said Ron. "Give Pig something to do." "You couldn't give us a bit of extra food, could you?" he said to the surrounding elves, and they bowed delightedly and hurried off to get some more. "Dobby, where's Winky?" said Hermione, who was looking around. "Winky is over there by the fire, miss," said Dobby quietly, his ears drooping slightly. "Oh dear," said Hermione, as she spotted Winky. Harry looked over at the fireplace too. Winky was sitting on the same stool as last time, but she had allowed herself to become so filthy that she was not immediately distinguishable from the smoke-blackened brick behind her. Her clothes were ragged and unwashed. She was clutching a bottle of butterbeer and swaying slightly on her stool, staring into the fire. As they watched her, she gave an enormous hiccup. "Winky is getting through 6 bottles a day now," Dobby whispered to Harry. "Well, it's not strong, that stuff," Harry said. But Dobby shook his head. "'Tis strong for a house elf, sir," he said. Winky hiccuped again. The elves who had brought the eclairs gave her disapproving looks as they returned to work. "Winky is pining, Harry Potter," Dobby whispered sadly. "Winky wants to go home. Winky still thinks Mr. Crouch is her master, sir, and nothing Dobby says will persuade her that Professor Dumbledore is her master now." "Hey, Winky," said Harry, struck by a sudden inspiration, walking over to her and bending down. "You don't know what Mr. Crouch might be up to, do you? Because he stopped turning up to judge the Triwizard Tournament." Winky's eyes flickered. Her enormous pupils focused on Harry. She swayed slightly again and then said, "Master is stopped. Coming?" "Yeah," said Harry. "We haven't seen him since the first task. The Daily Prophet's saying he's ill." Winky swayed some more, staring blearily at Harry. "Master, ill?" Her bottom lip began to tremble. "But we're not sure if that's true," said Hermione quickly. "Master is needing his Winky," whimpered the elf. "Master cannot manage all by himself. Other people manage to do their own housework, you know." Winky, Hermione said severely. Winky is not only doing housework for Mr. Crouch, Winky squeaked indignantly, swaying worse than ever and slopping butterbeer down her already heavily stained blouse. Master is trusting Winky with the most important, the most secret. What? Said Harry, but Winky shook her head very hard, spilling more butterbeer down herself. Winky keeps her master's secrets, she said, mutinously swaying very heavily now, frowning up at Harry with her eyes crossed. You is nosing you is. Winky must not talk like that to Harry Potter, said Dobby angrily. Harry Potter is brave and noble, and Harry Potter is not nosy. He is nosing into my master's private and secret. Winky is a good house elf. Winky keeps her silence, people trying to pry and poke. Winky's eyelids drooped, and suddenly, without warning, she slid off her stool into the hearth, snoring loudly. The empty bottle of butterbeer rolled away across the stone-flagged floor. Half a dozen house elves came hurrying forward, looking disgusted. One of them picked up the bottle. The others covered Winky with a large checked tablecloth and tucked the ends in neatly, hiding her from view. We is sorry you had to see that, sirs and miss, squeaked a nearby elf, shaking his head and looking very ashamed. We is hoping you will not judge us all by Winky, sirs and miss. She is unhappy, said Hermione, exasperated. Why don't you try and cheer her up instead of covering her up? Begging your pardon, miss, said the house elf, bowing deeply again, but house elves has no right to be unhappy when there is work to be done and masters to be served. Oh, for heaven's sake, Hermione cried. Listen to me, all of you. You've got just as much right as wizards to be unhappy. You've got the right to wages and holidays and proper clothes. You don't have to do everything you're told. Look at Dobby. Miss will please keep Dobby out of this, Dobby mumbled, looking scared. The cheery smiles had vanished from the faces of the house elves around the kitchen. They were suddenly looking at Hermione as though she were mad and dangerous. We has your extra food, squeaked an elf at Harry's elbow, and he shoved a large ham, a dozen cakes, and some fruit into Harry's arms. Goodbye. The house elves crowded around Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and began shunting them out of the kitchen, many little hands pushing in the smalls of their backs. Thank you for the socks, Harry Potter, Dobby called miserably from the hearth, where he was standing next to the lumpy tablecloth that was Winky. You couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you, Hermione? Said Ron angrily as the kitchen door slammed shut behind them. They won't want us visiting them now. We could have tried to get more stuff out of Winky about Crouch. Oh, as if you care about that, scoffed Hermione. You only like coming down here for the food. It was an irritable sort of day after that. Harry got so tired of Ron and Hermione snipping at each other over their homework in the common room that he took Sirius's food up to the owlery that evening on his own. Pigwidgeon was much too small to carry an entire ham up to the mountain by himself, so Harry enlisted the help of 2 school screech owls as well. When they had set off into the dusk, looking extremely odd carrying the large package between them, Harry leaned on the windowsill looking out at the grounds, at the dark, rustling treetops of the forbidden forest and the rippling sails of the Durmstrang ship. An eagle owl flew through the coil of smoke rising from Hagrid's chimney. It soared toward the castle around the owlery and out of sight. Looking down, Harry saw Hagrid digging energetically in front of his cabin. Harry wondered what he was doing. It looked as though he were making a new vegetable patch. As he watched, Madame Maxine emerged from the Beauxbatons' carriage and walked over to Hagrid. She appeared to be trying to engage him in conversation. Hagrid leaned upon his spade, but did not seem keen to prolong their talk, because Madame Maxine returned to the carriage shortly afterward. Unwilling to go back to Gryffindor Tower to listen to Ron and Hermione snarling at each other, Harry watched Hagrid digging until the darkness swallowed him and the owls around Harry began to awake, swooshing past him into the night. By breakfast the next day, Ron's and Hermione's bad moods had burnt out, and to Harry's relief, Ron's dark predictions that the house elves would send substandard food up to the Gryffindor table because Hermione had insulted them proved false. The bacon, eggs, and kippers were quite as good as usual. When the post owls arrived, Hermione looked up eagerly. She seemed to be expecting something. Percy won't have had the time to answer yet, said Ron. We only sent Hedwig yesterday. No, it's not that, said Hermione. I've taken out a subscription to the Daily Prophet. I'm getting sick of finding everything out from the Slytherins. Good thinking, said Harry, also looking up at the owls. Hey, Hermione, I think you're in luck. A gray owl was soaring down toward Hermione. It hasn't got a newspaper, though, she said, looking disappointed. But to her bewilderment, the gray owl landed in front of her plate, closely followed by 4 barn owls, a brown owl, and a tawny. How many subscriptions did you take out? Said Harry, seizing Hermione's goblet before it was knocked over by the cluster of owls, all of whom were jostling close to her, trying to deliver their own letter first. What on earth? Hermione said, taking the letter from the gray owl, opening it and starting to read. Oh, really? She sputtered, going rather red. What's up? Said Ron. Oh, how ridiculous. She thrust the letter at Harry, who saw that it was not handwritten, but composed from pasted letters that seemed to have been cut out of the Daily Prophet. You are a wicked girl. Harry Potter deserves better. Go back where you came from, Muggle. They're all like that, said Hermione desperately, opening one letter after another. Harry Potter can do much better than the likes of you. You deserve to be boiled in frog spawn. Ouch. She had opened the last envelope, and yellowish-green liquid smelling strongly of petrol gushed over her hands, which began to erupt in large yellow boils. Undiluted Botober pus? I don't know what that word is, said Ron, picking up the envelope gingerly and sniffing it. Ow, said Hermione, tears starting in her eyes as she tried to rub the pus off her hands with a napkin, but her fingers were now so thickly covered in painful sores that it looked as though she were wearing a pair of thick, knobbly gloves. You better get up to the hospital wing, said Harry, as the owls around Hermione took flight. We'll tell Professor Sprout where you've gone. I warned her, said Ron, as Hermione hurried out of the Great Hall, cradling her hands. I warned her not to annoy Rita Skeeter. Look at this one. He read out one of the letters Hermione had left behind. I read in Witch Weekly about how you were playing Harry Potter false, and that boy has had enough hardship, and I will be sending you a curse by next post as soon as I can find a big enough envelope. Blimey, she'd better watch out for herself. Hermione didn't turn up for herbology. As Harry and Ron left the greenhouse for their Care of Magical Creatures class, they saw Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle descending the stone steps of the castle. Pansy Parkinson was whispering and giggling behind them with her gang of Slytherin girls. Catching sight of Harry, Pansy called, Potter, have you split up with your girlfriend? Why was she so upset at breakfast? Harry ignored her. She didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much trouble the Witch Weekly article had caused. Hagrid, who had told them last lesson that they had finished with unicorns, was waiting for them outside his cabin with a fresh supply of open crates at his feet. Harry's heart sank at the sight of the crates. Surely not another Scroot hatching. But when he got near enough to see inside, he found himself looking at a number of fluffy black creatures with long snouts. Their front paws were curiously flat like spades, and they were blinking up at the class, looking politely puzzled at all the attention. "These are nifflers," said Hagrid, when the class had gathered around. "You find 'em down mines mostly. They like sparkly stuff. There you go, look." One of the nifflers had suddenly leapt up and attempted to bite Pansy Parkinson's watch off her wrist. She shrieked and jumped backwards. "Useful little treasure detector," said Hagrid happily. "Thought we'd have some fun with him today. See over there?" He pointed at the large patch of freshly turned earth Harry had watched him digging from the owlery window. "I've buried some gold coins. I've got a prize for whoever picks the niffler that digs up most. Just take off all your valuables and choose a niffler and get ready to set him loose." Harry took off his watch, which he was only wearing out of habit, as it didn't work anymore, and stuffed it into his pocket. Then he picked up a niffler. It put its long snout in Harry's ear and sniffed enthusiastically. It was really quite cuddly. "Hang on," said Hagrid, looking down into the crate. "There's a spare niffler here." "Who's missing? Where's Hermione?"